I'd like to call the City Council adjourned meeting for Monday, October 17th, 2005 to order. We'll have roll call, please.
Arbogast.
Here.
Garnos. Gisselbeck.
Here.
Heller.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Meisenheimer.
Here.
Solberg. Walder.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
And York.
Here.
Thank you.
Why don't we stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Item number 1 on the agenda is the motion to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of October 3rd of 2005.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Wilson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Johnson. Are there any additions or changes to those minutes? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is item number 2. It's an application for transfer of a retail on-off sale malt beverage license for DJ's Casino Incorporated, doing business as DJ's Casino, to DJ's Casino. And so we'll begin with the public hearing. And with the public hearing, I would like to read 2 letters that was received by one of our council people. The first one is from Verla Berner. She says, I own property at 716 First Street Southwest. I oppose a casino going in across the alley from my property due to lots of traffic. And if they build up the lot, there will be flooding. And she signed that Verla Berner. The next letter that we received is from Greg's Auto Sales, from Greg Kurkowski. He says, I am the owner of Greg's Auto Sales, and I am opposed to the casino going in south of my business located at 709 South Broadway. Signed, Greg Kurkowski. Next, I'll let the floor be open for anyone else that likes to come and speak to the issue. Yes. Come up to the mic, Harlan. Identify yourself, please.
I'm Harlan Stevenson. I own a piece of property right to the south of this proposed, where they're transferring the casino license. I guess there's 3 things that I'm a little concerned about. Is there's a proposed parking in the back for 5 cars. And I pulled in there and tried to pull up there and back up and to drive out of the parking lot like it showed on the diagram. And there's just no way that you can pull up there and back up and drive out. We had to back up, drive ahead, and then back up again and try to get around. And that's with no vehicles alongside of you. I'm concerned, my house, it's a foot off the property line. And I just don't think there's no way that you could stop from backing into the house. One thing during for the variance on that property, it was always called a 50-foot lot. Well, it's not a 50-foot lot because there's a gentleman that owns a property to the north is built across the property line. How this happened, I don't know, but that was never brought up. The fact is that he was built across the property line. So the lot is a lot smaller than that. Then in the front, there was 4 parking spots for the front. In the front of the property sits about 24 feet from the curb. Well, the way you get 4 vehicles in there, you have to pull in directly right in towards it, and then you'd have to back out on Broadway. That's the only way that you could ever get 4 vehicles in there. So that deal wouldn't work. Then I guess the other thing that I'm concerned about is the water issue. That the property is sloped from the north going south, and then when you get to the south end on 8th, it's sloped and goes north. So it kind of catches the water from all directions. it's all sloped towards the alley. Well, what happens, we get a rain, the water kind of sits there in the alley, and then it runs over onto this lot. This lot is a grassy area, so anytime we're getting rain at all, the water is, 4, 5, 6, 7 feet or inches deep, and then eventually soaks away. Well, if Mr. Johnson's going to develop this property and blacktop it, well, I don't know where that water would go. That's another really concern, and I think it's a concern to the neighbors because there's a new house right across the street or across the alley, and they've already got a new garage with the concrete sloping right to the existing alley. And so if the alley or whatever tries to get raised, I just don't see how that deal would ever work. And then with having a house there, even though it's going to be a rental house, it makes it pretty hard to rent, and this was basically a residential area. And it makes it pretty tough to rent out a house when you got traffic coming in there maybe up to midnight, right alongside the house. And that's about all I got to say. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Harlan. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the issue? Dave, do you wish to speak at all on your behalf?
Oh, as far as
Dave, do you want to identify yourself?
Dave Johnson, as far as the parking in back, just before we came here, I got a Dodge crew cab and I could get that turned around in there easy enough, so that's not true. And that other building is built about 2 foot, so it'd probably, with a fence there, I think I could put the parking lot within a foot or two. I think they said I could do it. So that would still give you, 46 feet to back out and turn around and go. I got to say.
Anyone else have any?
Well, yeah, I went down and looked at it this morning, and I used to live down in that neighborhood a long time ago, and I really don't think that's the correct place for a casino, Dave. It may fit the legal qualifications, but I think that's the wrong place to do that down there in that residential area.
I agree with Harlan on there just isn't enough room for it. There just isn't enough room. And what he's saying is right.
I also drove over there and in the back, and I cannot see, you maybe one vehicle I can see if you're just in there all by yourself, but if there was a couple other vehicles there, I think you'd have some problems going on, and also in and out of Broadway too. I'm just not for this project, I'm sorry.
I think the water problem is probably the major problem, even more than the parking. It has been a low area in that area. And there have been several buildings that have built in there since, and they've raised it up, and somebody's going to end up on the bottom of that totem pole there and get all the water. I don't know for sure how you drain it out or anything, really.
Herb or Rick, how did this get, how was this with the planning and zoning or board of adjustment? How did this fly, and what did the plan look like, and how did it get this far?
Rick, while you come to the podium, I can try to answer that question partially. The issue of the site layout and those kinds of things were talked about at the Board of Adjustment meeting. However, the principal question that was before the Board of Adjustment, as everybody on the council knows, and for the benefit of the folks listening, under our Watertown zoning ordinance, and just ordinances in general, there is no place in Watertown, no hunk of dirt in Watertown that is pre-approved for the transfer of a malt beverage or a liquor license. So the only way that any property can be approved for the sale and consumption of beverages at a particular location is you've got to go before the Board of Adjustment and ask the question, given its location in the universe, is this piece of property appropriate to have the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages upon it. So that special exception use was the question that the Board of Adjustment primarily focused on. Prior to the meeting, I know Rick pulled together the minutes of this conversation to see if there were actual discussions about the site layout and such as that. But the principal question before the Board of Adjustment is, given its proximity to the VFW and other locations around the area, does this seem like an appropriate space where a transfer could occur?
Well, that's all good and fine. Doesn't normally parking spaces and the rest of that seems to me from the Board of Adjustment meetings I've attended always seems to enter into the discussion as well.
And it did, and some of the very folks who approached the podium tonight were at that meeting and that conversation did occur.
I might add that this discussion was held before the Board of Adjustment in their September 22nd meeting. We, as a part of that process, staff and the applicant were required and identified 6 adjacent landowners that required to be notified by certified mail, which did occur. We received green cards back from all 6. One thing that hasn't been talked about a little bit, this is in a C3 zone, which is a commercially zoned area. Yeah, many of the properties that we've heard from that are residentially used are in fact in a commercial zoning district. And therefore, the zoning does provide for the opportunity. If it was anything but a commercial zone, we would not be talking about a casino or a liquor license or anything. So from the zoning perspective, it does seem appropriate. It is a special exception to account for and at least consider the issues of the adjoining property owners and the types and the uses of the property adjacent to that. So we feel that has occurred in September 22nd. We looked at, again, the number of machines that were likely to be there in the casino and did an analysis. We think that we should have approximately 7 parking spots. The site plan that we looked at and received provided 10 spots. We've heard this evening 4 in front of the structure that exists today, so we're not talking about a new structure, but that condition, I used to do my taxes there. I think it used to be H&R Block. Used to pull in there the same way that right now 4 of their customers would pull in there and back out onto Broadway. We did talk about the, I believe it's 6 parking spaces, 5 or 6. We talked about 5. I thought it was 6 parking spaces in the rear of the building. If it's a 50-foot wide parking area, the standards that we use and advise our clients and customers here is for a 90-degree parking stall, you need 18.5 feet. So you can park it right up to the bumper right up against the wall. 18.5 feet back is a standard parking stall. And then we recommend, and very seldom do we vary from a 26-foot driveway aisle in order to get some of the larger vehicles, even the Tahoes and Yukons Excursions, into a 9 by 18.5 foot parking stall. Doing the math, that's going to leave us less than 50 feet. I think this is a 50-foot lot. We felt that from the standards that have been employed in our community, the parking areas would suffice to provide access to 6 stalls. Other than that, some of the things that we did hear from Claire Matson contact us at a staff level. Claire Matson and an adjacent landowner, Mr. Stevenson, did appear before the board. The board moved to approve this location for a casino. With conditions, we identified a need that it doesn't seem appropriate to put blinking lights. Some of the casinos around town, you get blinking lights to draw the attention and to set it out as a casino, and that would not be consistent with what we're looking at in terms of revisions to our sign code. We also suggested no banners to keep the site a little bit neater in appearance as well, and that's also consistent with the sign code revisions that are upcoming. Other than that, we're looking at a paved parking area, which is a plus from our viewpoint in our stormwater phase 2 efforts. And I guess that would conclude any comments that I would have. If there's questions, I would certainly be willing to try to field those in conjunction with the applicant.
Rick, I believe we're talking about a 48-foot wide lot instead of 50, correct?
The information that we were provided indicates a 50-foot width on that lot.
But I thought there was a building that was 2 foot over.
in the back. That's what they just told us basically now.
Well, I guess this is the first I've heard of that, and I would, if Ken is here, I don't know if he's behind me or not, but if so, that's the first that I guess I've heard of that instance. That did not, is not included in the information that we received from the applicant and considered. The site plan, that level of the work, I believe has been done. You know, these issues had not come before us. You know, the 2-foot overhang at the Board of Adjustment.
Does the site
discussions.
plan also include the depth or the lack of filled material in the back parking lot back there? Because if you look at it, it's a grassy area, and it has to be 6, 8, 10 inches lower than the alley and lower than up where the building is. So that there's a big like a bathtub back there, and if he fills that up with something and then puts asphalt on top of it, you're gonna have a mess back there.
The site
It's
plan
got to go someplace.
The site plan did not address that, to answer your question, Mr. Heller.
Well, I'm going to move that we disapprove the transfer.
I'll second.
Hold it, we're still in the public, the public hearing part of the, sorry. Does there anyone else have any issues to speak to the issue? If not, I'll close the public hearing, and now we'll have council action. We have a motion to transfer the retail off-sale malt beverage license to DJ's Casino to the new location.
What motion is that? No, I'm going to move that we disapprove.
Okay,
the
there's a
transfer.
motion to disapprove the transfer of the location. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gizelbeck. All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And that motion was to deny the transfer to the new location. Item number 3 will be the Blake's Addition rezoning. Rick?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Blake's Addition is kind of a new name, so I'll bring this up. I think I'll bring it up the way it looks. On the city of Watertown, the mayor and the city council, we received a petition to change zoning dated September 2nd, 2005 from your petitioners, Peggy Haugen and Joy Nelson. You have that petition, the text and the exhibit, the attached exhibit of Blake's Addition. You have that in your city council agenda packet. You also have in front of you in the packet ordinance 05-12, which was written in response to the recommendations made by the Plan Commission after they held a public hearing. Blake's Addition. Blake's Addition is located at the intersection of 19th Street East and 1st Avenue North. And it was previously known as outlot number 3 of Kemp's outlots 1, 2, and 3. In that quarter section, it was described as a quarter section. Some landmarks here, I described it as being at the intersection of 19th Street, located at the cursor going up and down on the screen right now. 1st Avenue North, located in a left to right direction on the screen right now. Other landmarks, I believe this is a Baptist church, Casey's. This is, as I understand it, the property owned previously by the Rowan family. There's a church here. I guess I can't recall which church it is right now. But it is this parcel of property for which we speak to this evening. Again, we went through a very similar situation. In terms of landowner notifications, we provided, or the applicants did, I should say, provided certified mail notifications to the adjacent landowners. This matter was taken up before the Plan Commission in a public hearing on September 22nd. You will recall that we took up the plat action on October 3rd to replat Camps Outlots 1, 2, and 3 to become Blake's Addition on October 3rd, and this council approved that action. We also, in that same evening, October 3rd, had the first reading and introduction of the ordinance 05-12, and this evening a couple things that we need to do to move the issue forward. We'll have the second reading of ordinance 05-12, which is entitled an ordinance amending zoning district boundaries by rezoning certain real property from R2, which is single family attached residential, to a C2 zoning designation local commercial and C3 highway commercial district. This matter, we will also be holding tonight a public hearing. This was public noticed as well, and then we'll be looking forward to some action. And with that, I will close my remarks and defer then to Ardell Lawson to take us through some of the chronology of where things have started and where we are this evening.
So we can consider this, the portion of the second reading of the ordinance number 5-12 has been completed, and we'll move on to the public hearing on ordinance 5-12.
Yes, Mayor.
And now Ardell Lawson will speak first.
Thank you. Ardell Lawson with Austin Engineering here to speak on behalf of Peggy Haugen and Joy Nelson. And just to give you a little overview of where we've been and where we'd like to go, Rick has 3 different drawings on the overhead here that I'd like to bring up just to discuss briefly. The first drawing is just kind of a display of what our hopes were for this property when they purchased it. Our initial submittal to the Planning Commission was for lots 1 through 5, which is a green area, to be C3 highway commercial, and the yellow color C2 local commercial. Well, during the Planning Commission meeting, there was discussion and there was opposition to that particular zoning, and we'll show you a second slide that reveals the outcome of the Planning Committee meeting that night. And the proposed changes by the Planning Committee, and Peggy and Joy were not, did not attend that meeting that night. I represented them on their behalf. But the discussions led to this particular layout where the yellow is C2, whereas before we were C3. So there was a downscale of one size there for the zoning, and lots 3 and 4 were left as highway commercial, which is what we desired all along. And there was opposition to lots 6, 7, and 8, which is the light blue color. And we, that night, the Planning Commission felt that we probably ought to leave that R2, which is what it's currently zoned, and possibly come back at some future date with a specific plan in mind for business or development or whatever there, but as a means to kind of bring a compromise, so to speak. That's what came that night out of much discussion. This evening we'd like to present a third option, really, and it's up to you where we end up tonight, but we feel there's justification and good reason, having input from Peggy and Joy after the Planning Committee meeting, to present this third option.
You ready for that?
Yep. And in the third option, we'd really like, this is what we'd really like to see. Now, whether we get there or not will be your decision, obviously, but we have good reason for wanting to go this direction. When they purchased the property, they clearly had commercial development in mind, without question. It's a quite expensive piece of property because of its location. First Avenue North and 19th Street East, all of you know, will become very busy very soon in the not too distant future. Peggy and Joy are visionaries for our community, and they've been involved in development for 20-some years. And they speculated on this property with the hopes that good things would come from it. And this is a zoning that we feel would best fit Watertown and its growth and provide the services into that area of town long term that will be in everybody's best interest. The green we're looking at as highway commercial. The yellow color we're looking at C2, which is local commercial district. And we'd really like to get the blue area rezoned from the R2 to R3. And our primary reason for wanting to get that to R3 is the property immediately adjacent is already R3 that's contiguous with this parcel, and the lots are quite large. They're, I believe, 185 feet deep, 100 feet wide. They're just, it's an awful lot of land mass for an R2 application. It would be very expensive to put a duplex on this property and try to make it work. In fact, it probably wouldn't work very well. And it's only natural to go from a commercial to a multifamily to a reduced R2 type zoning and then to R1. So we feel this is a natural progression in the zoning for this particular piece of property, and it will serve their needs very well. Again, I'd just like to remind you that Peggy and Joy have been involved in the development for, as I indicated, 20-some years. They plan to build an office facility within this property somewhere. I'm not sure which lots they've targeted for sure that, but in the very near future, they themselves will be building an office for their realty company, Haugen Nelson Realty, and will be operating out of this location. With that said, they wanted me to ensure you that they will keep everything around them like-minded in respect that they're not going to compromise their own property or the adjacent properties. This will be quality construction and good business type applications. There are certain things that may well be involved in the highway commercial. They have no intent whatsoever to even go that route. But the highway commercial does provide opportunities that a C2 doesn't as well. And they'd really like to see that corner in 19th Street reserved for that application. I guess that's probably a summary of how we feel concerning the property. Joy herself would like to share with you as well. And I'm here to answer any questions or concerns that you might have, as is Joy as well. But I think we'll turn it over to Joy if that's okay, unless you have questions before Joy comes.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing. When somebody buys a piece of property, it's not our responsibility. I mean, you need to find out what can be done with that property before you buy it, not buy it and say, okay, now here I am holding the bag and you won't do what I want. We have to make sure that, I mean, as purchasers, we have to make sure that
Sure.
everything is in line before we make that purchase.
Yeah, the only
Not that I have any doubt that they respect the integrity of the neighborhood and everything, but just to make that point clear that it's not our responsibility.
No, I understand that, but obviously they are visionaries for the community and felt this was a natural progression and was willing to take that risk. And I understand it is your decision, not ours in the end, and we respect that. We're here tonight merely to give input to the reality of the situation in hopes of gaining what we'd like to see for this property. And any other questions?
Yeah, Ardell, would you please just explain to all of us what the different classifications are, C2, commercial,
Sure.
and all that stuff?
Highway commercial C3 is zoning for probably the highest commercial zone. I mean, you can do just about anything that's built within Watertown from a commercial aspect can fit into the C3. For example, right across the street, which is also zoned C3, the gas station convenience store, I can't think of the name, Casey's, would be a C3 application. Other applications for C3 would be typically things that you would purchase along a highway. It might be, or it could be a car lot, for example. There could be a motel, a restaurant, things of that nature that typically would fall along busy corridors. C2 is considered local commercial district, which is more along the lines of businesses or services that would provide to the neighborhood, so to speak. Commercial applications, it could be a grocery type application or things that would service the neighborhood for the most part. And then the R3 multifamily is greater than a duplex. It would be like a 4-plex, 6-plex, 8-plex. And there are requirements for square footages for those units that would restrict how many could go onto each of those lots. with the parking and et cetera. There are ordinances that would take that into consideration but again, this is our desire, it's our wish. You make the final decision. We understand that, we do respect that as well. You know, that's up to you guys. We're just offering our thoughts and concerns as well. Any other questions? Okay, Joy, would you like to come up?
Joy Nelson, Haugen Nelson Realty. I'd like to begin by saying that had this piece of land been a part of the comprehensive land use, it would have made it a whole lot easier on the Planning Commission. They did a wonderful job, but they would have had a little more direction had this piece been in there, but it was not. It was not addressed in the comprehensive land use, so they did a good job with what they had to work with. However, we feel that the plat that exists before you maybe serves the land a little bit more nicely with those 2 revisions in the zoning. With the acquisitions of the funds for the First Avenue Connector Street, it has changed the complexion of this area and this land immensely, completely. The First Avenue and 19th Street intersection will without a doubt be the busiest intersection on 19th Street other than the intersection of 19th and 212. It also, this stretch of road right here will be the gateway to Northeast Watertown from the south. That is where the majority of the residential development in Watertown is occurring. Therefore, it's very important that this chunk of land be developed very professionally and yet flow and conform to the future use properly. There'll be a lot of people traveling on that road and it needs to be done professionally. So bearing in mind the traffic that 19th will bear from 212 to that First Avenue connector road, we just feel all 3 of those lots on 19th should unquestionably be C3 zoning. The C2 lots on First Avenue are just fine. That's a good zoning for that commercial, those 2 pieces right there. But the 3 lots on Kemp Avenue should not be R2. The land directly to the west, as Ardell said, is currently R3. The land on the corner, hopefully, should be commercial. So we shouldn't have R2 in the middle of an R3 and a commercial zone. It does not flow right. So a continuance of that, the westerly R3, should be a very practicable use on those 3 lots. We think that this plat, as it's presented, is the best utilization of that land, and also it best serves the city of Watertown. I understand that there are some citizens who have questions regarding this. I can assure you that we would not compromise the integrity of this development. We intend to occupy the property ourselves. So we would be as concerned as you as to who our neighbors would be. Consequently, I think our concerns are more aligned with theirs than divided. And in view of the fact that we will be there ourselves, nobody will want to see this be developed more properly and professionally than we will. And we can assure you that we would develop that in Watertown's best interest in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Would there be anyone else who'd like to come and speak to the council on this issue? Hi, Virginia. Just come up and state your name, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Virginia Skinner, and we own adjacent property to the area involved with this rezoning. Of course, we would like to see the area built and remain as an R2 residential area, but we are particularly concerned with the lots along Kemp Avenue. That area is all residential south of there, and all the streets going south off Kemp, 15th, 16th, and 17th, go into cul-de-sacs. So that all the residents in that area come on to Kemp Avenue, and the increased traffic that would be involved with commercial development would have a very adverse effect on that residential area along with the ones on Kemp Avenue. Since the east side of 19th has had commercial development, we find it difficult to get on 19th. And with commercial development on Kemp, it would just generate more problems and restrict the traffic flow there. We are against this requested zoning change, And we thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Virginia. Anyone else to speak to the issue?
Good
Gwen?
evening, Mayor and Council. Gwen Schultz, Jerry and I are also property owners down there. While this is all new information to us tonight with the new zoning, really don't want to see that to go to commercial 3. The southern lot there is right across from Trinity Lutheran. The other one on the north end is right across from Prairie Lakes Baptist. I don't see that. We're not against commercial. What we'd like to see is it moved right across the street, headed east on First Avenue, ideal spot. But in a quiet residential neighborhood, like Virginia said, you can't hardly get on 19 the way it is. There's no stoplight. I don't see how this is going to benefit the east end of town that is a quiet residential neighborhood and very well kept up. But I thank you. I have seen wisdom here tonight, so I commend you. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Gwen. Anyone else to come and speak to the issue?
I am Lisa Fear, and we live in the area south of Kemp Avenue, which is all residential. We had a neighbor who moved in from the country onto our street, which is 17th Street, and they like the residential neighborhood so well that within a couple years, his brother moved right behind him, and within a couple more years, his sister moved down the street. So we do have a very nice residential area, and we'd like to keep it that way. The church, which is located to the south of Kemp Avenue, also has a school. It's a small school, but they do have a playground there. And the area that the church kids play is right along Kemp. And so I think it'd be very inappropriate to have commercial lots right across the street from that. And also, as I drive up and down 19th Street, on the west side of 19th Street, there is currently no commercial buildings other than Walmart. And so I think it would be a very good transition for those entering and leaving Watertown to leave those lots residential, maybe multi-family, multi-home. And if there was going to be a commercial lot, have it only be the corner lot, which up there I think says Lot 3. And if we could keep the commercial mainly on the east side of 19th Street, we could continue the really nice residential neighborhood that we have, and the traffic is getting heavy. And I think it would make a good transition to keep that residential or multifamily. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that'd like to come and speak to the council on this issue? If not, then we will close the public hearing and move on to the council action. So we'll need a motion from the council as to how they wish to proceed.
Mr. Mayor, I would, for discussion purposes, I would make a motion that we follow this particular recommendation right here, making lots 1 and 2 C2 commercial, lots 3, 4, and 5 C3 commercial, and lots 6, 7, and 8 would be R3. And after there's a second, I'd expound on that.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wilson. Open for discussion?
Well, my reasoning for doing this is simply reality, and I understand residential concerns and everything, but First Avenue North is going to change substantially, and sooner than later, probably within the next couple of years. That's on our plan to connect First Avenue North from there out to basically the intersection with the new Super Walmart. And that road will bring a significant amount of traffic into that particular area, and part of the reason that we were doing that is to provide easier access of people up into the northeast part of town, and also to relieve traffic off of Highway 212. The result of having that type of traffic is going to demand a change in the use of the property in that area. You've already seen the Casey's go there. You've got all the way along on the other side of the street, C3, highway commercial. To arbitrarily say that we can't have it on the other side is not, it doesn't make sense from the market standpoint. Lots 6, 7, and 8, which would be R3, are the ones that are going to be closest to the residential neighborhood. Presently across the street from houses over in that area already, outlot number 3, there are 24 apartment units on that particular area, and the R3 would allow development of residential type, so multifamily residential, and so commercial is going to be confined down on the corner. The Planning Commission had recommended commercial in that area already, and we're simply changing that from C2 to C3 to be consistent with all of the land use across the street. I would guess that at some point in the future, you're going to see the north side of First Avenue North. Both sides of that are going to change in use. One's vacant, one's a church right now, but it's going to be a very busy commercial corner. I think reality is that as we develop new roads and move traffic, and as the city grows, things are going to change. I don't think that it's going to have significant negative impact on the residential neighborhood. You're probably going to see a stoplight probably at the corner of 19th and First Avenue, which is going to allow for better traffic control through there. So I think that's going to help some of the issue. But I think this zoning is simply responding to the reality of what's going to occur in that neighborhood with the traffic that's coming.
I think this is somewhat of a compromise. Before, I did not like the zoning at all. I wish, like the neighborhood wishes, that everything could always stay the same, but we know things change, and we made 19th a very busy street. I thought it was interesting when Lisa spoke that she said the only development on the west side of 19th is the Walmart building, when one of our largest employees in the city of Watertown is right next to it, being the Human Services Agency. But there's some businesses that just blend into a neighborhood like that, and a lot of professional buildings, office buildings. If we could have some kind of assurance that that's what was going to be there, those are very, very quiet in a residential neighborhood, very not interruptive to the things that go on today. And I'm not sure how we can make an assurance like that. It'd be completely different if it was a grocery store or something that was there. And that would probably be under the highway commercial anyway. But I think that this is a compromise. I don't know if the neighborhood likes this compromise better than what we had before or not. I'm not sure how you're feeling. Like I said, I can certainly see your feelings that it's always been a nice, quiet neighborhood, and you don't want to interrupt that. But also there's progress. We also have to look at it from a business standpoint. We have very little business development area in prime places like that. So I don't know if Joy and Peggy have anything to say about if the plans are for disruptive businesses, or I suppose there's no way you can assure that.
I would speak to that. I can't assure you what's going to be there, but I can tell you that we want something that would be compatible with us. We're not looking for noisy businesses to be next to us either. So like I said before, I think maybe their concerns and ours are maybe more aligned than they are divided. I mean, we're looking to make the area very nice, very professional, and I can't tell you who's going to be there. I don't know yet. I know we are. Okay.
Joy, what lot of those do you plan on occupying?
We really haven't made that decision yet. I really don't know. I don't know which one yet. Any other questions?
Based on the square footage of each of the lots, 6, 7, or 8, how large a complex could you put on each one of those lots? How many units?
Ardell could maybe answer that question a little better than I could. Or Rick.
Well, basically the lots that, yeah, here's the calculator if anybody wants it. Basically, the lots that are there are about as small as a typical commercial lot gets. They're a little bit bigger than what our zoning requires, but not a lot. I mean, unless you combined some of those lots together, you wouldn't be putting a huge business in there. Each one of those is designed for a smaller type of business, unless, of course, you combine some of them together. And they're not extraordinarily large, so you can have big complexes in there.
Nor are the commercial lots. They're not excessively large either, so they're not going to accommodate, you know, a large, busy business. It's more of a smaller type facility. Okay, Ardell tells me that a sixplex would accommodate on each one of those R3 lots.
And outlot number 3, which would be right adjacent to that, and that area there contains 3 8-plexes.
Okay.
I would like to make a comment. I received several calls from the people in Morningside Addition and along Kemp, and I know where they're coming from. The other side of the coin is, I know Joy and Peggy, and I know what they have done in their previous real estate dealings, and I'm putting my money on Joy and Peggy because I believe it will be an enhancement to the neighborhood. I have across the street from me a whole block that's empty, and I would love to have them come and develop it. But, you know, I know where the residents are coming from, but I think if we just be patient and see Joy and Peggy will take their thoughts into consideration. Thanks.
One of the difficulties of this board and also the planning board that I am a liaison to is the fact that while we're in the present, we're always trying to look 50 years ahead, and therein lies the problem, and or the opportunity, depending upon how you look at it. And so, having sat through many hours of all of those kinds of things, I have to be agreeing with Brad and down the trail, whoever else happens to agree, that this and the people that are developing it are the ones that I put my confidence in. And if you look at what's happening over there with the residential area and the things that are going to be required in 20 or 30 years when that's full of, I think it has, what, 350 spaces for houses, if I remember right, a humongous amount. And those people aren't certainly going to go way downtown to buy groceries or wherever the grocery stores end up. So I'm thinking that doctors and dentists and those types of places will occupy that space and will serve those people in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Any other discussion?
Reminds me a little bit of the hospital rezoning when they did their addition up there, and we certainly had a big deal with that. And now that it's done, you know, it's beautifully done, landscaped. I think even the neighbors are happy with it. The traffic is flowing the way it's supposed to. And certainly if there's traffic problems through something like this, that's another issue. Those are enforceable issues if there's traffic things going on. So even though it's a tough one.
Stanton, this was originally presented as an ordinance, and we're changing that. Is the way we made that motion correct, or does it need to be an amendment to that, or?
It's the motion as stated is certainly not inappropriate. As I understood it, you basically moved approval of ordinance 0512 with amendments to the particular zoning classifications of the lots, and that's fine.
Okay. Is there any other discussion before we vote? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 is the authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement to lease space to FAA at the airport terminal for radio control operations. Eric?
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Tonight, I got 2 items, but we'll start with item number 4. Basically, to allow the mayor authorization to sign a lease with the FAA for the radio operations control room. That's just a sub note about that room. It's basically the standby for the VOR, the Very High Omnidirectional Range, how airplanes know where they're going. That's what that room is for. It's in case the VOR ever goes down, that room kicks up and planes can still navigate the sky. They're going to pay $4,440 per year, and it's a 5-year lease. It's a little bit more than they pay right now to adjust for inflation and things like that, and it's paid in quarterly at $1,110 per quarter. If you have any questions about that, I can answer them, but that basically sums up that item.
Could we have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved, seconded by Mr. Giselbeck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
And that was, on the motion was Mr. Meisenheimer made the first motion, so. Next is the authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with Helms and Associates for engineering services related to the 2006 Airport Improvement Project to construct a new taxiway and make various runway improvements. And Eric?
Okay, basically we're talking about the engineering agreement with Helms Associates with the airport and the city to construct the runway or the taxiway for next year. And on your desk there you have attachments B and C, which talk about total cost for this engineering project at $176,924.01. As like all AIP eligible projects, the city will be responsible for paying about 3% of that cost at about $5,307.72. It's a standard engineering agreement with Helms Associates that we've seen lots of times before. And if you have any questions about the agreement, Bob Babcock from Helms Associates is here, and so am I, and we can answer any questions about that.
Could we have a motion then for that, please? Motion by Mr. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Solberg. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. Would you break down the federal cost and all the different costs again?
Sure. I don't have those particularly in front of me or calculate or compute those, but all I really figured out was at 3%. But the total cost of the project is $176,000, or it's $176,924. We'll drop the 1 cent for right now. But of that cost, the federal government pays 97% of that, which leaves the city only $5,307 left over. That's what the city would pay for that engineering agreement. That's not the whole project cost, but that's the cost for the engineering agreement to do the project.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll have Betsy Lentz come to us with a presentation on the 2004-2005 Highway Safety Program. Betsy?
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I've been here before. This year we are finishing our Safe Communities project. It's been a joint project between the state of South Dakota and the Watertown Police Department, and I have been in charge of that program on a part-time basis for the past 2 years. And I've got a few highlights to show you. Thanks, Rick. A few highlights to show you of what we've been doing and sort of why we do what we do, too. The grant that we have is pretty open-ended from the Office of Highway Safety in South Dakota. It's any projects that are safety-oriented in Watertown that we deem important to our citizens. And in that, I've worked on many different projects and with many different committees throughout town that we'll talk about later. But there is a primary focus to improve seatbelt usage and to cut back on impaired driving, both drug and alcohol impaired driving. And we're just finishing up on our 2nd year as a grant recipient. The National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration is the leading funder of safe community projects throughout the nation, and I believe South Dakota has 5 communities currently participating, and Watertown is one of those. They believe that it's a combination of both public education and awareness, as well as improved or increased law enforcement that are going to make behavior changes. And changes that we would like to see are increased seatbelt usage and less impaired driving. And this is a little bit about why we want to do what we do. The South Dakota statistics. In 2004, 197 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes in South Dakota, and 78 of those people died due to an alcohol-related crash. And sort of an infamous statistic for South Dakota to claim is that we are third in the nation for alcohol-related fatalities. Based on the miles that we travel. It's not based on our population, obviously, but that's a really poor statistic to claim that we have such a bad track record. It's something that needs to be changed throughout the state. We're also not very good at using our seat belts. We do have a seatbelt law for South Dakota. It's currently not a primary law, so it's not, a police officer doesn't stop you for that infraction. It is enforced if they stop you for some other violation. And I do believe, Sergeant McMahon, it's $25 fine? $20 fine, which isn't much of a deterrent as well. The nationwide number that they're using for seatbelt use is an average of 82%. South Dakota is one of the lowest at 69 point something. It's even less than 70%, which is another poor statistic for South Dakota to claim. And most of you have met or know of Kelly Rumsa and the work that she does with Watertown Healthy Youth. And one of the projects that I worked with her on last spring was a survey of our own high school students here at Watertown High School. It was an online survey, so it is not scientifically correct, but it does give us a reading as to what our kids are thinking and what our kids are seeing. We had 211 respondents, and 38% of those kids told us that they worry about their friends drinking and doing drugs. It's a concern that we do have in our community, and even our children are worried about it. And one of the good things that came from that survey is we started a new program. It's called Teen Focus. It's a joint project of Watertown Healthy Youth, the Boys and Girls Club, and myself working as Safe Communities. And they've established a youth council. The children themselves have called it Teen Focus. They plan, they meet, and they promote and implement safe and tobacco-free events. And it gives our kids a place to go, something to do, which is one of their main complaints for why they get into trouble and do unsafe behaviors. And this is one of our events that we held in July. They planned and hosted a summer dance at the Boys and Girls Club, but the bigger event was the Battle of the Bands, and this was quite early on. You can see that we utilized the showmobile from Park and Rec, and we had 5 local youth bands that performed at no charge. It was very loud, but we had over 300 kids there that night. A lot more came when it got dark. We had 0 incidents. We had Watertown Police was on hand, and we had some chaperones. And at the end of the dance at 11 o'clock, there was about 30 kids that even helped pick up the trash. It was just amazing. That was at the Allen Mitchell Field, right next to the track. So we had restroom facilities. We had a couple of food booths available. We had the parking lot available across the street at the Boys and Girls Club in the high school. It just really went well. I was really, really pleased. And the kids loved it. They want more of those same events. This is another picture from that same evening. One of the kids, these are actually high school kids that play in these 5 different bands. I didn't know we had so many talents in our community. But the kids are working. We have representatives from every group from middle school and high school working they meet once a month or twice a month to plan an event. The next one coming up is going to be a bowling night here in town. And the big vote from them is that the bowling alley is smoke-free now. And so that's kind of an incentive in that direction as well. But it's a really good thing to see that our kids are actually taking the initiative themselves to do something to make their own community a little bit better. Along that same lines, one of the projects that I worked on was to work with parents and other volunteers to provide a safe drug and alcohol-free event for after prom. We had over 200 students, which was a really good portion of those that attended prom. And it just gave them a place to go, so it was a little bit more of a special event. But they were safe. We kept all of those kids from drinking and driving.
What about the Tux event? Do you do anything after the Tux?
This year we didn't. No. After prom is kind of a little bit where they've done it in the past. It was a little easier to go. One of the other big events that we do directed at the students is the docudrama. I work closely with Tyler McElhaney, and he and I plan and execute a fake or a mock car scene. It reenacts a drunk driving accident, and the girls in this car are all senior class officers, and the entire senior class is excused from school for the duration to come and view this. And this is Tyler and Mickey Boschnagel from Prairie Lakes Hospital mocking up the girls. Many of you know Katie Schul. She was Miss Teenage South Dakota. It was Katie's choice. She wanted to be the student that would reenact the student that would be killed. And she wanted to make a difference because someone in her family, in her life, had been killed in a drunk driving accident. And it's just another scene of how we stage the event. You can kind of see in the background, the kids get to go and walk up close to the car, really kind of get a feel. It's a very eerie feeling. Roger Salvage brings us the car and places it in the park by the high school, and it's a car that's been in a wreck. It's a real thing. And the students reenact the scene, and then as the seniors get there, they go through and visualize what would happen after the 911 call, right down to the fact where Katie, in this case it was Katie, was carried away in a body bag in a hearse with Crawford Funeral Home. This event is a cooperative effort of many people in Watertown. We do feel that it has a definite impact on our students. Several kids came into the office after that and signed up to go to the after prom party because it did make an impression on them. Tyler and I would like to see the school participate a little bit further. At this time, it's only offered to seniors, and unfortunately, we have lost students in the last couple of years, and they aren't seniors. It's younger kids that are in bad situations that we've lost, and we think that, you know, maybe we'd be able to do something a different time of year for juniors, and then the docudrama for seniors later on. But it is a cooperative effort, and following the scene, all these people are inside for a panel discussion to the students directly, to state what the impact is of being a responder to one of these calls. Another project that I participate on is the Meth Coalition, and most of you know Kathy Asper's been working very hard on that here in Watertown, and it is a concern in many communities in the Midwest particularly. We have all the raw ingredients to make and produce methamphetamine, and it is a growing concern, but the Watertown Coalition is doing such great work that it's being copied throughout the state and the region, and Kathy's work is now being spread out to Hamlin County and Clark and I believe Millbank as well. My participation on that is a lot of marketing. This is something that we did at the high school and middle school last year. It's a handout that we reviewed with parents while they came for parent-teacher conferences. I do a lot of layout and marketing and press releases for the different projects that I work on. And the CERT training, many of you may have read about it or heard about it in the paper. It's actually a project of the Cottington County Emergency Management, but it's a community emergency response team, and they've hosted this training class twice already, and you can see we have Watertown firefighters that serve as the leaders or teachers of that course, and 27 members have currently gone through that class, including myself, and most of those people are city residents. And it's a basic training so that if first responders were unable to get to a location due to a tornado or whatever accident may occur, these people would be in their own neighborhoods and be able to attend to their own families and direct neighbors and at least start some of the response effort that would have to be done. And that's something that we would like to see grow throughout the county, but particularly the city, because the city's infrastructure would have a bigger impact if a tornado came through. The Watertown Police Department has several people, officers on staff that are trained specialists to do car seat safety inspections. We have a lot of parents that are doing the right thing and they are putting their children in child safety restraints, but they're not 100% safe unless they're installed correctly. So we twice this year have hosted inspections, and this is Officer Jesse Compton, and we also have Officer Steve Rehorst. And for the general public that may listen or hear, these are also available if you schedule an appointment at the police department. You can bring your vehicle down. This particular customer or gentleman was a grandpa, and so that car seat isn't utilized very often, and he wanted to ensure that his granddaughter was okay when he put that car seat in the car. But the police officers would be happy to check anybody's vehicle to make sure that all of the children in Watertown are being transported safely. And one of the other projects that I did on behalf of the Office of Highway Safety, it sort of helped all of South Dakota. We utilized a little bit of expertise at Lake Area Tech, some brochures that I provided to a market research class. We had them review and just determine if that message is getting across. And they provided a report back to the Office of Highway Safety. And we are very glad that we have established a new MAD chapter, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It's classified as a Cottington County chapter because MAD works by counties, but it is based in Watertown, and it's run by Crystal Owen. And I'd like to, acknowledge or recognize the fact that Cottington County chapter was listed or selected by the National MAD as the outstanding new chapter for the year. Crystal has a very personal reason for being involved. She's the aunt to all of the Red Days, the 6 Red Day children that were killed in the van accident in Waubay. I believe it was 2 years ago. But this is something that we'd really like to see grow in Watertown, where the general public would get more involved in combating drunk driving. And another project, I have an appointment on the Mayor's Committee for People with Disability. They meet once a month to do public awareness and address handicapped parking and accessibility issues. This past year we worked quite a bit with the Watertown Building Inspector on accessibility issues, sort of building that committee as a advisory for that building inspection office if they have issues with accessibility. And one of their big projects is Disability Awareness Days, held at all the elementary schools. Just gives the kids a chance to see what it would be like if they actually had to live with a disability. And this is kind of one of the fun ones because they get to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches while they're blindfolded. And it gets to be a really big mess. We also participate in the community health fair, and the police department has 2 booths. Last year I was here, and Charmel came as Miss Clickett, dressed as a clown. And that's another Watertown success story. It's one of our things that started here, and it grew, and now she is doing presentations and performances throughout the state. It's really grown to be an animal of its own, and she's out and about and has a grant of her own to do this work. And that's the safety and magic in law enforcement. We also had drug information presented by our officers and detectives for parents and teachers. And we also participate in part of Family Fun Week, and the culmination of that is Family Fun Night. And it really gives the public, it's predominantly attended by families with young children, and it's kind of a chance for the little kids to actually talk to an officer so that they're not afraid of an officer. The big hit this year was we had a squad car, and they got to turn on the lights and the sirens and sit inside and do a lot of things. But it's really a good thing for our officers as well to be able to talk to the public. And here again is Charmel in one of her presentations. The key to our success is basically public awareness, and we're very fortunate to have continued media support for our project that really amplifies the message. I'm only one person, and I work on all these different committees to get a lot of information out as much as we can. And we can't do that without the help of our media. One of the things that we've been able to do is I provided this graphic, as you can see, that was printed as a filler in a paper, and the radio stations in town, all of which have provided hundreds of public service announcements, both promoting the youth dances or having our officers encourage people to buckle up. We really couldn't do what we do without their help, and we'd like to recognize that. And I'd like to thank you for your support for the past 2 years. And if anybody has any specific questions on what we do, I will answer them, or try to.
Well, thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Betsy. You did a wonderful job.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay, thank you. Next we go to item number 7, which is authorization to accept the highway safety grant for the 2005-06 Highway Safety Program. Chief Vitek?
Yeah, and I'll ask Sergeant Scott McMahon to join me. Mayor and City Council members, I want to tell you that about a month ago, I asked Sergeant McMahon to write a grant for me. And I have to offer my apologies because being the new kid on the block, I forgot or didn't know I had to ask permission to do that. He did such a fine job that the state has awarded us, the Watertown Police Department, $17,500 for a DUI alcohol impaired grant. Anyway, I think it's a win-win situation. And of course, Betsy's already shared with you some of the vital statistics here in South Dakota that are of concern to us. And I asked Scott to come because he's the guy that wrote the grant, and he deserves a lot of credit because he did a heck of a job. I'm real proud of him, and I'd like for him to share with you what we're proposing.
Hopefully you've all had a chance to review the grant proposal that we put together at the police department. I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to introduce you to the You Drink and Drive, You Lose program. This is a program that's used nationwide by law enforcement agencies. It's been in existence for about 5 years. The goal of the program is to reduce the number of fatalities as a result of traffic crashes that have alcohol involvement. Each year, annually, the United States experiences about 43,000 deaths related to traffic crashes, and of that 43,000, 17,000 of those have alcohol involvement. So that's the whole purpose of the You Drink and Drive, You Lose program. Here in Watertown, we saw the need for the program for about 4 specific reasons that I can relate to. One is that we've had an increase in all of our alcohol violations. That would be DWI, open container in vehicles, underage consuming by our younger folks in the community. And we've seen just, a wide variety of alcohol violations that we've had increases in. Another thing is, in July we had 3 crashes that had alcohol involvement, and there's roughly $70,000 worth of property damage and 5 injuries as a result of those 3 crashes. So, and then in the past month or so, we had a person that was under the age of 21 that was involved in a traffic crash that caused another $30,000 in damage approximately. And then we can also recall that earlier in the year we had we lost 2 of our young folks in this community due to alcohol impaired driving incidents. So if you have any questions, I can certainly try and answer them. Otherwise, we're ready to go to work and implement the You Drink and Drive, You Lose program.
Okay, can we have a motion then for the accept the highway safety grant for 0506?
Everybody.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Arbogast, seconded by Mrs. Walder. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is the authorization to accept, item number 8 is the consideration of a business license application from Hartung Electric for an electrical contractor license for a fee of $200. We have a motion for that approval? So moved by Mr. Giselbeck. Second by Mrs. Solberg. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next on the open, Tracy.
Thank you. The first item on your open agenda is consideration of a contingency account budget transfer of $8,500 for the ice arena water heater replacement. The council did approve in their 2006 budget an amount of $10,000 for replacement of the water heater at the ice arena. However, recently, and it's described in an email, I believe, attached to your open agenda that was on your desk tonight from Roger Adams, that the water heater has begun to have some pretty serious problems, and they don't believe it's appropriate to continue to use it in its current state of disrepair, I guess I would say. So Roger is asking for this contingency account transfer to replace that heater this year, and that would eliminate the need to spend the funds next year. He did receive 2 quotes from local plumbing contractors. The low quote was from Herney Plumbing for the amount of $8,479. I know Roger wanted to be here tonight himself, but he was not able to be here, so he asked me to present this to you for your approval.
Thank you, Tracy. Can we have a motion for that approval?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Walder, seconded. Second by Mr. Meisenheimer. Any further discussion? If not, all, excuse me.
Tracy, when that's in the budget for next year, what happens to those funds then? Do they go into the contingency for 2006, or do they stay in their budget for something else?
Well, the funds were budgeted in the Park and Rec fund budget itself, and so that the money will be, this $8,500 will be spent out of the Park and Rec fund, and the $10,000, of course, next year will simply not be spent, and so they will have those monies remaining just be available to reappropriate then for the following budget year.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Tracy, you have 2 items?
I believe Dave or Shane was going to address this next one.
Good evening. In the payment of the bills this past month, there was a wrong number that was put in for payment for a contractor. The contractor was underpaid by the amount of $40,734.45. They were paid $137,431.79, but we had reviewed their payment application and everything looked fine, but when it came to putting it down for the amount to be paid to them, we took it off the wrong line, and so they didn't get paid enough. They're due this $40,000, and we're asking for you to approve the payment of that.
Have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by?
Second, and a good try.
Seconded
though,
by
Dave.
Mr. Wilson.
Good try, Dave.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Item number 10, is any old business? If not, we'll go to item number 11, any new business? Item number 12, any liaison member reports? We will need to go into executive session. We need to go into executive session for contract negotiations. And when we come out of executive session, we expect no action to be taken. So I would like a motion for executive session. So moved by Mrs. Arbogast, second by Mr. Meisenheimer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you.